On a dark night, when the moon was hidden behind clouds and the stars barely twinkled in the heavens, a silence enveloped the small town. In the cemetery outside the town, where ancient graves seemed forgotten by time, something unimaginable began to happen. Lightning ripped the sky brightly, and a strange light flooded the hills of the graves. In this cemetery, where the whispers of the past had long been silenced, shadows began to rise. At first glance, they were ordinary graves, covered only by a layer of damp earth. But something terrible, something that had no right to exist, brought these dead bodies to life. The ancient crosses trembled under a strange influence, and the earth began to ripple beneath the feet of those who rested in eternal sleep. Shadows rose out of the gloom, taking the shape of bodies that had once been lost. They were reanimated corpses, but not as one might imagine in horror stories. These creatures, lifted from their graves, carried something sinister with them. Their eyes glowed with a cold radiance, like dying candles in an empty house. They moved towards the city, leaving a trail of darkness and coldness behind them. In the heart of the city lived an old magician, banished for his macabre experiments. He had once sought the secret of immortality, and now he seemed to have found it, in the graves from which the living dead rose. Magic beyond comprehension animated the bodies and souls of the deceased, transforming them into monstrous creatures. The city awoke from its slumber to the threat of uncharted evil. The reanimated corpses were carried through the streets, and their footsteps were heavy and lifeless. The townspeople, not yet realizing what awaited them, were met with fear and powerlessness. All attempts at resistance seemed futile. The old mage, sitting in his dark laboratory, watched the scene, drowning in contentment. His creatures, subject to his will, were rushing towards the center of the city, where he planned to perform an ancient ritual that would summon darkness from the deepest corners of the darkness. But suddenly something went wrong. The magic he had released spiraled out of control. The living corpses, freed from his power, began to realize their own pain and longing. Their eyes, previously glittering with anger, now expressed only suffering. Suddenly, one of the creatures approached the mage and spoke in a low, ragged voice, "We return, but not for evil. We return to bring light to the darkness you have caused." The other reanimated corpses folded themselves into a strange ring around the mage, and their bodies began to glow with a bright light. The dark clouds that had thickened around them began to part, and the first rays of dawn penetrated through them. The city that had nearly been swallowed by darkness was saved. However, the one who had awakened the dead disappeared without a trace. Since then, the town has avoided the cemetery as a place where secrets beyond human comprehension are hidden. But on nights when the wind whispers secrets and the moon hides its light, some claim to hear summoning whispers from the darkness and see glowing eyes that remind them of the terrible events that once took place in their small town.